There we go. So welcome everyone to our falling leaf drawing. This is a mixed media piece using pencil and 3 colored pencils here. Again, orange, brown, and I'm using a golden yellow. And these are just Crayolas. So doesn't have to be anything fancy. Obviously, the better colored pencils like Prismacolor will really make it nice, but Crayola is just fine as well. We're using, again, watercolor paper or mixed media paper. I'm just going to kind of show you for the texture. And hello, Tammy, welcome. I'm going to just recopy one more time in the chat our supplies. So good to see everybody. I was just saying at the start of this, I feel like we're back in school. It's like, welcome back. We're to art school. So I'm happy everyone can be here. Okay, let me admit somebody else. This is probably a pretty popular program. This is the first, so Wrightstown Library was the first library to pick this one, and obviously to, we're having this one tonight. So I'm assuming this is going to be pretty popular, whether people show up or wait for the recording. So we're going to get started here. As you can see, we are keeping our paper in portrait mode. And I'm just going to adjust one more time because for some reason I did not adjust correctly. There we go. And I'm going to move it over a little bit. Perfect. So we are going to start off with pencil first. We are going to sketch in the leaf part, obviously. And then we will go back and create that using our colored pencils. We're also going to be talking about how we're going to be holding our pencil. As you can see, it's there's a lot of kind of squiggles. And the way that we achieve that is by actually holding our pencil this way. It might feel a little strange to you at first. So before we actually start doing the shading, if you have a separate piece of paper or you want to flip it over on the other side and practice, we'll take a second to kind of practice. So no worries there. All right, so let's get officially started. I'm going to move this up here. No, I'm not. I'm still going to move it over here. I'm still trying to kind of get in the whole thing. There we go. All right. So we're going to start on our paper probably about a little more than halfway. And actually, let's see. Are we halfway? Yeah, just about. We want to make sure that we leave room for the long branch here. Let me just get this right in view. And so we're going to start up at the top. And basically, we're going to be sketching just kind of straight down. But at the same time, we're going to curve a little bit, our lines. We're not going to make it look so much like, perfect. So I like to kind of make the tree a little bit bulbous down here as it goes downward. So kind of something like that. And then we're also going to just sort of sketch in the long branch. And so that's going to start about, more than halfway down our tree. And the key to making it look like the branch is going to be the other side or the other line that you use to create that branch. It's going to be a little bit thicker down here, and then it kind of goes up and gets thinner like this. So going upwards, we're going to go up and we're going to add a thinner, smaller branch to it over here, like so. And it's going to go off of our paper. So it's going to go off on the right side. I feel like it's a pretty simple drawing, right? The most is that we get to, create all the texture that's going to happen with the tree. Let everybody do that first. And I think I'm gonna kind of elongate the bottom portion here of my branch because I want it to kind of sit a little lower. Okay, now once we have that, we're also going to add another sort of partial branch up here, right at the top. So we basically have a line here and the same thing. We're going to create part of it over here as well. And so we're basically just doing the outline really of everything. You know, we may want to adjust some things. I'm realizing I may want to kind of make my tree a little more, I'm going to make mine a little more straight. I started kind of curving off. So I'm just going to, while I'm looking at it, I'm going to make it a little more straight like this. And then I'm just going to readjust my branch over there. Okay, and so now we get to another fun part, the leaf. So the leaf looks gigantic. That's because it's kind of falling off of our tree. And so we're also going to come down and make sure that we draw in sort of the hole in the tree. So that hole is kind of to the left side of the branch over here. So we're going to kind of sketch in that hole. So maybe like that. And I haven't really drawn the outside of it, so you can kind of create sort of an underneath sagging of it right there. And then we're ready for our next step, which is the leaf. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to make the general shape of the leaf. So our lines are going to be flat. And then once we make sure that we like where our leaf is positioned in front of our tree, then we're going to go back and make the edges scalloped. So basically, we have the hole in our tree. We're going to go up from that. And we're going to make our leaf. So again, our leaf is going to be going in front of our tree. I'm going to be making the lines very dark so you can see it on Zoom. But again, you always want to make it lighter. I think I have to kind of adjust my shape here. And then obviously you're going to have to erase the line for the tree because your leaf is going to be in front of it. So that's our basic shape. And then we want to make sure that we want to add our stem area. And I like mine to kind of go upwards a little bit as it goes toward the end, kind of like this. Kind of make a little bit wiggly and then join back up to our leaf. So that is our basic shape. You want to take a look and see, you know, if you like where it's positioned. Not, you can kind of change that now. But now we're going to go back and basically lighten up the outside line of the leaf, because we're now going to make that look like jagged. And we're going to grab our orange to do that. So we're going to be sort of erasing the line around our leaf. It's okay if it still shows. And you still want it to show a bit because you want to make sure that you can still see it. And we're going to take our orange and we're going to start tracing around it. But instead of making the line flat, we're going to make it jagged. So we're following, again, we're kind of following this line, the outside line of the leaf. But now we're going to make the outside more leaf-like. And let me see if my orange is showing up. I'm going to go in really close because I realize the orange does not show up on Zoom as much. So like this, we're thinking we're going in and out, back to here is my old line. And I'm kind of just tracing around. We get to a point on the one side and then go back and kind of go almost the opposite way. We actually kind of do go the opposite way to create those shapes. And then you can also do the same with the stem, except as far as erasing the pencil and going over it in orange colored pencil for now. Realize I'm not quite on camera. There we are. And then you can erase any pencil lines inside your leaf that you need to do right now. And we will come back to that leaf later on. But we want to start with creating all of the nice patterns we have happening with our tree. And so this is where, if you have another piece of paper or you want to just kind of flip it over, we're just going to kind of practice a little bit of what I'm talking about with the pencil. So normally, we're used to using a pencil like this and kind of shading like this. We'll be doing some of that, but we're also going to be doing sort of the lines, the jagged lines. And in order to get it looking textured, you're going to be holding your pencil somewhat like this. So I'm just kind of, it's going to be a little awkward. And so you're basically using it on the side. And so I'm able to make a line like this where it's thicker than just if I were to take my pencil line and go like this. It's also kind of shaded. And then even when we're shading, you're going to be kind of almost like inching it along the paper. And you might straighten out sometimes. Yeah, John Paul, you got it. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a combination of all that. And then, we'll come back in and we'll shade. We'll get darker in parts by going over it again. So yeah, if you want to just kind of practice that before we start. I know it's a really strange way to hold the pencil, but you get a lot of really neat texture from it. So I'm going to flip on over. And if by any chance you're not able to achieve that, that's okay too. You can still use your pencil like this. It'll just come out a little darker. But if you're using textured paper, watercolor paper or mixed media, it will help. So let's get started now. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the hole in the tree first. And so we want to get this dark kind of around the outside of it. So again, we're holding our pencil if you can, like this. So we want to get it nice and dark. We want this part of the tree to read that it's going inside, that it's recessed. And then we're going to kind of make a little bit of a half, kind of like a little rainbow right there. And then one below it. Not exactly below it, but. And then we're going to shade above the rainbow and below this one. And so we're going to start shading. And here's the other thing. We want to leave a little bit of white, like a white edge, kind of around here. So I'm going to do it quickly just so you can see. So it's going to look like that at first, and we're going to get a little darker, but that's sort of the gist of it. And I'm going to go in a little bit closer so you can see that. See all that nice texture that's starting to happen. And then we're going to go in the middle and kind of also shade. And then we're going to start to get a little darker. So we're going to get darker on the right side. So basically, we're going to go like this, get darker here, darker here. And so let's get started with that. So inside here, I'm going to press on my pencil a little more. You see how that's getting darker? I'm going to come around. It's almost like we are kind of going around in a circle. We get darker down here too. And then we're going to lightly shade over the rest of it. It kind of reminds me of an ear. So I'm thinking of, the inside parts of the ear. And then we're going to go now on the outside of this part, and we're going to draw kind of a circular area up top and one on the bottom, like this. Okay, so now we are going to start doing some shading first. We're going to shade the background first for the sky, and then we're going to come back into the tree. So basically for the sky, we're going to do just, some very light shading, just going back and forth all the way down. These are little leaves that are in the distance, so we will add those too. But first we're going to add the light shading in the back. And if you've noticed, I've kind of done it where it's kind of streaky, and I did that on purpose. But we're going to start up here. And so you're going to go really light. We're also going to come back and we're going to smudge it a little bit using our blending tool. And just take your time, just going left to right. kind of getting in between the tree and our falling leaf, and just taking your time. It's okay if your lines don't exactly line up with the way you're shading. We just want to get a back and forth, a left to right texture there. You can hear all that textured paper. I actually like drawing on watercolor paper. It was something I did accidentally years ago, and I found I really liked it. So every once in a while, I like to use it in a project. And then when you have it kind of covered, you want to kind of quickly go back, and take your time. We're not moving too far ahead. I'm just saying what you can do now is grab your blending stump or Q-tip or whatever you have to blend. And now you're just going to soften up those lines a little bit, and we're going to go over it one more time. I can't wait till we actually see leaves that look like this. I feel like it's starting. There's some trees that I've seen that are definitely starting to turn a little bit. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. Yeah, I have too. So when you're done that, you can go back in and add a little bit more closer to the tree. I like to add a little bit more kind of darker shading, like right up against the tree. Just a little bit. And even kind of on alongside the branch on the left side here. This is on the sky section of it. And then I just go back and kind of smooth it out again. And it's okay if you get it on the actual tree, because obviously we're going to be covering that with our own texture. By the way, your hands get kind of dirty with this. Not as much as charcoal, but definitely a little more. And then we're going to start drawing some very tiny swirling leaves. So for instance, oh yeah, nice, John Paul, that your texture is nice on the sky. Very nice. So our little swirling leaves, we have one down here, and you can make as many as you want. We have one down here that is curling. One here that is sort of turning as it's twirling, and it's a little bit crunchy. And then I even have one over here that is kind of turning this way. So we're going to start up top. And so basically we're going to start with the basic shape, and I'm going to go in really close since it's a little hard to see the tiny swirling leaves. So we're gonna turn that leaf like this. Here is basically the stem part. And then on the right side, we're gonna make some curves because that leaf is on its side. And then you can just very lightly kind of shade it in, but we'll make it a little bit darker right where the leaf meets up with the stem, like so. And then the only other part we're going to do is we're going to kind of add another slight curve here and make it a little darker so that it looks like it's the inside of the leaf. You'll do that here and then right here. And see, now it looks like a turned leaf. And we're going to add a very light colored leaf over here. Basically, the shape is going to start off like this. And then this is sort of the middle of the leaf. So we're going to add some very light sections of the leaf. And I'm going to make this a little bit darker. Let me see if I can get this up close to the screen here. It's kind of like that. It's almost like a leaf that, you know, you've seen those leaves that are kind of dried out and they're still kind of hanging on, but it's lost most of the bulk of it. That's kind of what I was thinking with this leaf. If you want to make a full leaf, that's okay too. It doesn't have to look like mine. So good to see everybody. I'm just kind of scrolling through. It's good to see Lorraine. I know you came in later, and Jade, and Ani. Who else I have here? Donna. Nice. And then we're gonna add our third leaf here. So again, another tiny one. Here is the original. So again, this one is also curved. And as you can see, these are very faint. So I basically made these very light. I'm making them darker just so you can see them. But basically, we're going to start with a curved, kind of a, you know, like a curved, I almost said a curved tail, a curved part here, the stem, and then it's going to turn this way. And this is the underside of the leaf. This shaded part is the underside. So let's do that. So here we are over here. We're going to first make little curve, like almost like a backwards C shape. And then we're going to curve again, but make it a little bit wider. Then we go back with the other side and maybe add a little bit of a point to it because that's part of the leaf. And then we create kind of the underside of the leaf and shade that in. And again, you can take your, your tool if you want to make it a little bit, kind of a little bit blended in, or you don't have to. I'm going to lighten mine up a little bit now, just by going over it a little with my eraser, because I want it to appear like it's in the background. Oh, wow, John Paul, that looks beautiful. Very nice. Very subtle. That's what we're looking for. Subtle falling leaves in the background. I love it. I can't wait to see these. Okay, and now we are actually going to start with our tree. So I'm going to move my camera up one more time. And we're going to start off on the left side. So remember again, we're holding our pencil kind of toward the end here. We're kind of having it a little bit loosely in our hands. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to start off on the left side, and we're going to go a little bit darker. We're going to go straight down, but as you can see, we're kind of, sometimes we're kind of scratching, and then we kind of go down and we're moving our pencil from side to side, and then we get a little bit wacky down here. So follow me. Follow me through that. I will guide you through the wackiness. I don't know who's crazier, me or you guys, because you follow me, but I love it. So we're going to start at the top. And again, you're going to be moving down. So you're kind of like making these marks as you go down. You want to make sure to pass by your leaf here. And go down about right here. We get a little bit wider. And then we get wacky for the texture. So that means we kind of go all around in this one section. We're going to be doing more of that, but that's our first, that's kind of our first feel for it. And we're going to go back and add more texture. That's going to be what we're going to be doing with this whole section. Sometimes it's going to get wider, right? So that there's more white showing of the paper. And sometimes it's going to get a little darker, like here. So let's continue. We're going to come back up. And let me just make sure I am in view, because I kind of adjusted my paper. There we are. So we have a little more shading up here. And so we're going to do a little more shading. And if you notice, I'm kind of scribbling. That's the word I was looking for. I was saying scratching. It's really scribbling. It's kind of like a textured scribble. And then at the same time, we're trying to make the tree bark. And so we kind of go straight down, but then we also create maybe sort of a V shape like this. And then maybe we go right on top of what we just did, and that's okay too. We're going to come back and make things darker anyway. And we're now going to start adding in some of the shapes of the bark. And then we're going to go back on top of those, and we're going to make them a little more textured. So for instance, we're going to skip some space over here, and we're maybe going to make, just very lightly, we're going to make the start of some bark. I'm going to do the same, coming back up. You know, and here again, yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. If you kind of have tree bark in your head and you can kind of visualize it, right, with all the kind of nooks and crannies, you can draw it as you see it. But right now, I'm just kind of putting in some random lines for the tree bark. And as you can see, it's already starting to look like a tree, I think. Can add some light lines here. You know, light and wiggly is light and wiggly is what we're looking for so far. Excuse me as I just adjust this again. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit weird here again too. So, but we're going to go light and we're going to start up where our leaf is with our line. And then we're going to start kind of going like this in this section. Okay, so our next step is that we want to grab our blending tool. So whatever you're using, you just want to grab a blending tool and we're going to lightly kind of go over to the left real quickly, kind of some of the texture that we just created. So we're just going to smooth it out a little bit. But when we come down toward this leaf, if you have any left on your blending stump, you can start to kind of make the shadow. But then we're also going to go back with our pencil and add more graphite because there's definitely not enough. So you can kind of see that created a bit of a shadow. But then I'm going to go back and sort of outline with shading the outside. And you're going to do it all along the outside of your leaf. So you'll have to kind of trace while you're shading, or shade while you're tracing, actually. And it's going to make that leaf pop already. And then once you do that, you can go back in again and blend. That's our first step. We're going to make it a little bit darker later on, but we want to get sort of a base shadow there. So curious. I have a very itchy nose tonight, and I'm curious to see when I go downstairs and see my husband how much of this the pencil is going to be on my face. Must be like the beginning of fall allergies. I get those. I don't know if anybody else does. I feel like I get random allergies, especially when the weather, it's mostly when the weather changes. Okay. So when you are ready, we're going to start adding more shading now to our tree trunk here, or our tree. So we have the basic shapes here, And now we're going to come back and we're actually going to outline in a little bit darker pencil the outside of the tree. So we're going to go back and you're going to press on the outline so that it stands out. It doesn't have to be incredibly dark the entire time. We're going to do the same to both of the limbs too. So we're basically going back over them and outlining, but that shading, we're doing it on the side of our pencil. So that now it's nice and bold. Like so. And then we are going to start doing some more shading to the bark of our tree. So we're going to do some light shading. We started off kind of doing like, this dark shading. We're now going to start adding some really light shading. So same principle, we're kind of creating the texture of the tree, but we're going really light. And I'm going to go in with my camera so that you can see what I mean. So right here, I just did this really light line. I'm going to add some more next to it. Basically, we're kind of filling up some of the white spaces here. I'm just adjusting the light, seeing what might be more helpful for you to see. So we're staying right above our leaf area. We're just very lightly shading with our pencil. And then coming down toward the right of the hole in the tree. Let me move that up so you can see. Oops. We're doing some light shading and we're going to go toward the end or all the way to the right side of the tree with that light shading. And then we're going to start to get darker. We're going to do a combination of getting a little darker and also kind of like medium. But first we're going to go underneath the hole in the tree and we want to make this under here stand out as well. So we're going to go a little bit darker. So we're going to kind of trace around it. And then from there, we're going to add a little bit of a darker line coming from it. We're going to do a little more shading with lines. You can add some more sort of roundish circular lines. And even some kind of darker lines going like this. We're basically now adding to the bark of the tree. So a combination of adding darker lines that are kind of, separated, like little lines like this. Squiggly lines down here. But we want to fill a little more down here to the left with a little more shading, light shading, as we continue to create lines on top of it. And then we're going to start adding a little more dark on top of all of these lines that we've created so that we create some darker areas. So we're going to first go back over to the left side of our tree. And let me readjust here one more time. Now I haven't forgotten about these two sections. We just want to kind of get this a little bit darker. So again, kind of doing a scribble and going straight down, well, sort of straight down on the left side here of the tree. So we're kind of going up against the edge of our paper, and then sometimes we're kind of going a little bit more away from it. But we want some of the shading to look like it's darker. Let's see, John Paul. That's beautiful. Nice. You got it. I knew you would. I knew it. We're now going to get a little darker around our leaf again. So come on back when you get a chance and start adding a little bit longer of a shadow using your pencil, right? So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm kind of going along the edge of the pencil shape, or not the pencil shape, sorry, the leaf shape. But I'm making the shading a little bit wider as I follow it around. And you can see it looks even more like a shadow. And here again, when you're done with that, you can go back and smooth it out. And you can even start to bring that just a little bit into your tree, not too much, because we kind of want that texture. I went a little bit over my tree over here. I'm just going to fix that. Okay. And then we're also going to add a little bit of dark back into our circular area. We're going to make it really dark on the right side. You can actually kind of start to almost hard scribble. And then you're going to take your pencil and you're going to create some sort of dark scribbly lines around that area. So kind of changing the way we're using the pencil. And when you're done with that area, you can then shade a little darker, closer to the edge of your tree. And you obviously want to go upwards as well, above your leaf. Still have some of this area to make a little darker. And so you're going to continue doing that. Doing a combination of kind of going to the side, but just sort of filling that area in. Any spots that look too light to you, you want to make sure to kind of fill those. I had a spot here that was a little bit, I felt too light, too much white of the paper. And so now you're just going to kind of look at your tree and see where maybe you need to add more texture. or more scribbling. Or more random, darker lines helps kind of with pulling it all together. I actually have to sharpen my pencil at this point while we go on to the branches, which is going to be our next part. Not bad for an after school project. First one, right? First one back. Okay, so we're going to use the same principle in these two areas. So we're going to come up to here and we're going to do some darker shading on the underside, like so, because that's what it would sort of look like, unless the light is hitting it. But we're going to imagine that it's not. And then you're going to continue making, again, kind of scraggly lines, like so, making sure to have the white of the paper showing. You can shade a little bit, lightly shade, kind of closer to the area that we made darker, because this is the part that is underneath the tree and it would have a bit of a shadow. So it would be darkest where it's sort of hitting closer to the tree, and then it would get progressively lighter. Again, depending on where the sun was hitting it, but since this is a make-believe tree, we're going to pretend like it's darker over there. And then I like to kind of add a little bit more of a curve to where it connects to the actual tree. And then we're going to move on and make this next branch rather dark. But again, following the same formula where we're kind of making these scratchy lines. And I'm going to go in really close now that we are finishing the tree here. So again, combination of sort of scribbling, maybe a little more scribbling in one place to make it darker, but then also making sure that there is a little bit of the white of the paper showing. And then we're going to move on to our bigger, our last part of this tree besides the leaf. So again, we're going to go a little darker toward the edge here, kind of creating some lines like the bark. So you can see I'm kind of doing a combination of drawing and then also scribbling and then kind of circling at the same time. You can choose where that happens because again, this is the bark of a tree. lots of texture. So a little something like that, and then we'll add some more shading, maybe some more line work, individual line work. But again, we'll shade right at the edge again on the inside of the tree. And you can make it like a medium dark, maybe some parts. Maybe I want this part of the tree, it's bending a little bit, so I add a little bit more dark. A little bit light shading. And then I'm gonna, continue to add a few more darker kind of scrolly shapes. But then as I get to the edge here, I'm going to go just a little bit darker to kind of define it a little more. And then I shade a little more as it gets closer to attaching to the tree. Again, don't be afraid to kind of scribble. Sort of a loose drawing. And take a good look before we start on the other part. I like to sort of then maybe re-outline sections, just make it a little bit darker. Here I want to add like a really little piece of bark over there, but you don't have to. But if you're pretty happy with it, we are now ready to pick up our colored pencils. And we are going to start off with our orange. So I'm going to go in really close now. Also going to show the one from before. So basically we're going to start off in the middle, kind of the middle. We start at the tip of the end of the leaf where the stem is, and we're going to create, kind of like that crease in the middle, but instead of it being completely a straight line, as you can see, we're going to start kind of veering off into sections. So let's get started with that. Oh, John Paul, that looks amazing. Wow. That's incredible. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so orange pencils in hand. We're going to start off at the tip. And basically, here's how it's going to go. So I'm going to be drawing, again, I'm going to be drawing darker, just as a reminder. And just as a reminder on how to kind of draw, we're going to start off making everything light, because what we want to do is we want to still be able to come back in with our yellow pencil, and we want to be able to color in. But we start off with the orange. It kind of defines the different sections. So anyway, just kind of wanted to say that. So I'm going to put this kind of right next to it. And so again, we're going to start here. And so I'm starting off with this section right here. And we're going to go towards the leaves. And if you can kind of imagine maybe an imaginary line going this way. And actually, let's kind of lightly do that. I think that might be helpful. Let's kind of make like a dotted imaginary line. Let me make this a little darker. And then once we make that dotted imaginary line, we're now going to come back over here and basically draw sections. So we're going to draw kind of a line right next to the vein. And then it's going to sweep towards sort of the tip or the cut section of the leaf. And so we're going to continue doing that and making these sections. So I'm going to kind of quickly do it first, all the while following that center line. Again, you don't have to go this fast. I'm just kind of doing it so that you can kind of see what I mean, so that you end up with having a vein in the middle, and then you complete the other side as well. And we can go back and erase some lines. If you kind of like make a line where you don't want it to be, where the vein is, we can go back and erase. But you should end up with a leaf that kind of looks like this. And then we're going to start doing some light shading. So we're going to first shade on the stem, and we're going to shade on the top part of the stem. So here, kind of like on that section here. And then we're going to start shading in between, kind of right up against the vein, and this is just kind of a quick shading to kind of define it. So on the left side, we're shading up against the middle vein, and then we're going to hop on over to the right side and do the same. We're also going to start adding on either side of the vein going in the middle. If you have a single line, you're going to start adding another line to the veins that are coming out on the right side. I kind of started to do that, and I didn't instruct you to actually complete those lines. So we're going to do that now. So basically, you want to make sure that you have your vein in the middle, and then you have your veins coming out like so, and they're double lines, right? The way you draw them. And then we're going to be shading around that so that it gives the impression that it's, elevated from the leaf. Now, once you do that, we're now going to continue shading very lightly back again where the veins are. And then, so basically taking one section. So we're going to let's take this section. We're going to shade a little bit darker towards the vein, a little bit lighter in the middle. And then when it gets to the tip, you're going to go a little darker again. And we're going to repeat that process for all of the sections. We can even come back here. Add a little bit here. And especially at the start of where the tip kind of meets, or I should say the stem kind of meets the leaf. So here we are again over on this section. Again, I go a little bit darker. I get a little lighter, very light. Then again, when I get to the tip, a little bit darker. Again, you're repeating that process so that you will have an orange, kind of an orange shaded leaf. And then we'll add in the yellow, and then we'll add in the brown. We'll get a little bit darker with the orange coming back. But for now, we'll have it be like this process that we're doing. If you're not really sure how dark to shade, you can always go very light at first and then go back over those sections. Sometimes it's hard to tell how dark to shade. So it's always better to start lighter. It's harder to go back with colored pencil and erase it, or just make it lighter by making everything else darker. So that's not always the greatest either. So I always recommend going lighter at first if you're not sure, and then you can always go back over another section and, you know, think to yourself, you know what, that needs more definition. That means I need to make it a little darker. I feel like this is the really relaxing part because it's like coloring. Like you don't really have to think too much. We've done a lot of the thinking already on this piece, and now it's just the coloring in. It's like a cup of tea at the end of the drawing. And once you have your orange, you can then start adding in your golden yellow, which is really going to brighten it. And you're going to go pretty much all over with it. I like to leave some white space on the main vein a little bit, but I don't go too crazy with the basically worrying about where I add that. You also want to get to your stem using the yellow. Really kind of giving it that fall leaf glow. And you can choose how darkly shaded you want something or kind of loosely shaded. Like I kind of have mine very loose, but if you want to make it more, pronounced by going even darker with your shading, you can. And then at this point, I like to go back in with my orange and just kind of make, again, the parts closer to the vein a little bit more pronounced. So now I'm going back in with my orange before we top it off with the brown. And kind of scribbling a little more darker in the sections that are closer, closer to the middle vein. And then, maybe outlining just a little bit going away from the vein. The other color that you can add if you want is like a light green, almost like a lime green. It doesn't call for it, but if you want to, you can add that as well. Just maybe a touch of it. Again, I like to kind of go toward the edge of the points of the leaves. They're, it kind of makes it feel like they're kind of curling up a little bit. And then our final touch is the brown. Here again, you can put as much brown as you like. Definitely go into the stem as well. And kind of at the end of the stem is where I like to make that, make the stem look more realistic by making a, eclipse here. I'm just going to show that close, like right here, if you want. I do a little bit of outlining. And then, following the same pattern, adding the brown to the inner sections of the leaf. And you can add them to the tips. You can kind of lightly shade over a lot of the leaf with the brown, but then press and go just slightly darker again where we did like the orange and the more concentrated orange. You can really make the other veins stand out by almost like outlining them with the brown, but then adding some shading too so it doesn't look, it looks a little more realistic by doing that. Not that this is a totally realistic picture. Again, and if you want, you can even outline around the edges. of your leaf. You can make it a little brown, kind of curling up on the edge here. And then finally, what I like to do is I like to kind of go back on top of the tree, but right around the bottom of the leaf. Really make the shadow a little darker. So I start to shade much darker right around the edge of the leaf, but still keeping the other area that's shaded a bit more shaded, if that makes sense. Yeah, you can give it a once over, and you want to add any more lines to your tree before we show ours. You can do that. But I think I'm going to stop the recording and start to, you can unmute if you like. Let me stop the recording first. Stop recording.